Everyone visits St. Augustine and they have their rose-colored glasses on. They see the beautiful architecture, they see the historic downtown, and they see the beautiful pristine beaches that we have here. And they want to get in on the action. They want to move here. But once you move here, you start to see things in a different side, in a different light than you would if you were just coming here to visit. And my goal in today's video is to show you the top 5 secrets that you would only know if you were living here in St. Augustine. And as a local realtor here, an expert in the St. Augustine and St. Johns County market, I want you guys to know all the information so that you can make a good decision on what you're doing for you and your family. So let's get it started off with secret number 1. And in reality, this is probably one of the biggest secrets that I'm going to cover throughout this entire video, and it's that the city of St. Augustine and St. Johns County are 2 separate entities that operate separately, and they're not always on the same page. The city of St. Augustine represents a small area surrounded around the downtown historic section, while St. Johns County has to cover a lot more of an area and please a lot more people, and they don't always see eye to eye. And it seems to me from the outside that St. Johns County is very pro-business, pro-development. They want St. Johns County to grow rapidly, while the city of St. Augustine on the other side represents a much smaller pocket of individuals, and they want a completely different set of things for their local area. And that division affects everything in our local area because at the end of the day, the city of St. Augustine is kind of the heart of St. Johns County. It's where a lot of the jobs are here in St. Johns County, where a lot of the people go out to eat, go out for fun. That's going to be in downtown St. Augustine, whereas St. Johns County represents the masses of people that have moved here, are maybe working in Jacksonville, maybe they're working in downtown St. Augustine, but it's just 2 different people and 2 different ideas of what this area should be. And this split affects everything, whether you're talking about zoning, infrastructure, traffic, or how fast communities get approved or denied. So I want to give you one example of why the county and the city are not on the same page, and this is going to be surrounding one of our major tourist attractions which happens every single year, which is Nights of Lights. This is where they take essentially December and January, they deck out downtown St. Augustine in beautiful Christmas lights, and people come and flock to it. It's been ranked some of the best Christmas lights throughout the entire United States. So it's a major tourist attraction, and it's a major source of income for many people that own businesses downtown, but also at the end of the day, those businesses pay taxes, and who gets that tax money? St. Augustine and St. Johns County. So this happens every single year, and St. Johns County actually gifts the city of St. Augustine $200,000 to help them out with paying for the electric bill, maybe buying a couple of restrooms that they can put porta potties around the area, just so they can handle the influx of people coming into town. And on top of that, the city of St. Augustine also made the decision to shorten the length of Night of Lights because of traffic and congestion. I have a whole other video about all this kind of stuff and some of the major issues here. I cover it every single Wednesday on one of my live streams typically. I don't think this decision from the city makes a whole lot of sense, but in reality, this is where we are today. So the city of St. Augustine is asking St. Johns County for $1.2 million, $1 million more than they do every single year, and they're actually shortening Nights of Lights, and they've even talked about providing less services. They just came out just recently and said, hey, we don't have enough money for bathrooms and we're short about $300,000. But here's the real kicker. St. Johns County said, hey, we're going to give you $800,000, but we want you to restore what Nights of Lights is. So they're at odds, and the people that are really going to suffer here are the local businesses downtown and the locals that want to enjoy Nights of Lights during January, which is the portion that the city of St. Augustine shortened. And it seems like I'm going a little hard on the city of St. Augustine, and in reality, they represent a small group of people that live in downtown St. Augustine, and they're the ones that are most affected by the traffic, the tourism, the congestion that Nights of Lights brings. But at the end of the day, this affects more than just the people that live down there. And then also it's like, hey, if you bought a house in downtown St. Augustine, you probably knew about Nights of Lights. And if you didn't, well, that's a big problem, right? So you made a conscious decision to buy down there, and you're having to deal with that decision. And unfortunately, it's just what it is, right? Nights of Lights has been a big tourist attraction for many, many years, ever since I was a kid. And I don't think that's ever going to change. And that leads us to our next point, which is secret number 2, which is St. Johns County school system is going through some major growing pains. And a lot of realtors aren't going to talk about this because at the end of the day, this is one of the main reasons that people move to our county. We have one of the best school districts in the entire state of Florida, and we've been ranked number 1 or number 2 for like the last 20 years across the entire state of Florida. That's a major thing that St. Johns County wants to make sure they keep, and they like to talk about it and like to brag about it. And it's something that parents here like to brag about as well because they know that their kid is getting a quality education. But here are some of the problems that they're running into. Number one, overcrowding. We've had a ton of people move to our area, especially since the pandemic, and with that influx of students coming into our area and the population just growing in general, the school system has been strained. They've been building schools left and right, and I think they have a plan to build like 15 more schools over the next 15 years or something like that. But that doesn't help the people that are there now, and one of the main reasons people move here is because they want their kids to get into good schools and they want them to have a good education. Here, the student to parent teacher ratio used to be like 1 to 18. I imagine with the influx of students coming in every single year, we're seeing that grow larger and larger and larger. That leads me to my next point, which is point number 2, and a lot of people don't know this if you don't live here, but a lot of the times when they expand these schools to account for this growing population, the growing student population, they're not just building, oh, you know what, let's build additional classrooms down there. A lot of the times what they're doing is renting trailers, right? And they're actually very, very nice trailers. I went to RB Hunt, which is one of the best elementary schools here in the area, and that's what they put us in when the school started to expand. They said, hey, all 4th and 5th graders are going to go into these trailers, and there was nothing wrong with them. They had air conditioning, they were very nice, but that's something that's a little off-putting if you're not familiar with, like, that's just kind of a Florida thing. If you look at like any area around Florida, they've done that for a long, long time in order to help with the population growth of the student population. And that leads me to another issue within the school district, which is because they're building so many schools, school zones are constantly getting rezoned. So if your kid goes to one school one year and they build another school within a certain area, he may have to go to a different school, which adds a whole bunch of different stresses for you as parents, right? Now your kid's got to go to a new school, he's got to make new friends, he's got to get into his routine, his or her routine, whatever it is. That's a big issue, and it's something that parents have to constantly think about here because St. Johns County is growing so rapidly. The last point that I have when it comes down to our school district is going to be teacher pay. St. Johns County and the median sale price across St. Johns County, St. Augustine has grown tremendously. For a single family home here in St. Johns County, the median sale price is $550,000, including teachers, but public government and other downtown people working hospitality probably make around $55,000 a year, and that's the starting pay for teachers here. We're one of the best school districts in the entire state, yet we have one of the worst pay rates for our local teachers here, and that's not a good thing. So in reality, the school district is still really good. It's one of the best in the entire state, and it's happened every single year. I don't see that changing, but that doesn't come without some problems. And since we're talking about growth, this leads us to our third secret, which is honestly not something that you want to hear, but I mean, personally, I believe all government is kind of corrupt in some way. But locals believe that our county commissioners and our local county government is corrupt, and they're in the coffers of the developers. The developers are paying these guys off so that they can approve development after development after development after development all throughout St. Johns County, and the locals are honestly tired of it. And you can go anywhere. You search on Facebook, take a look at St. Augustine News, anything that you find, you're going to find frustration amongst the locals with all of this rapid development that we've seen here in St. Johns County, namely the northern part of the county where we've seen a lot of growth. So many of the locals feel like, hey, I moved here for a reason, or I've lived here my whole life, and my parents have lived here my whole life, and things have just changed so quickly that I feel like I'm left out, and St. Augustine is losing the charm that I once knew and loved. And that's a big problem, right? And that's also a big problem if you are moving here and they keep growing and growing and growing, and now all of a sudden St. Augustine and St. Johns County is North Miami. No one here wants that, right? But if there's money to be made, developers will sell houses to make money. So that, I don't have any proof in terms of like the county commissioners being in the coffers or anything. I ask people on the social media sites because I really want to know. I want to give you guys the information. But I personally don't believe that. I just think like, hey, everywhere across the United States grew like crazy over the past couple of years. Prices have grew in many places, not just here in northeastern Florida, but many other places across the United States. And it just happens to suck for all of us. Just to give you one example of this situation, they actually had the owner of Dream Finders, who's obviously a very wealthy man. Dream Finders is a national home builder. The owner lives here in Ponte Vedra Beach. He wanted to buy a portion of the Guantanamo Reserve, which is a beautiful park that you can kayak, go hiking in. It's absolutely gorgeous. He wanted to buy a part of that so that he can build luxury homes in Guana, right? Locals were pissed, it got shot down. It's not happening, but at the end of the day, this is the stuff that locals are fighting with. and you need to know about it. And guys, I do also have another video, which is the 5 biggest issues that I think our local area is facing. If you want to check that out, go ahead and check that out. I have it linked above here for you. And the 4th secret that you need to know about is that where you live here in St. Johns County and St. Augustine is literally going to be your lifestyle. And there's really 2 different ones, right? If you live surrounding the downtown historic area, the beaches area, your lifestyle is going to be that of a smaller beach town. If you're in the northern part of the county, the northwestern part of the county, northeastern part of the county, this is going to be more of a master planned HOA, CDD, suburban type of lifestyle where you're far enough away from the hustle and bustle of downtown St. Augustine and Jacksonville, but you're close enough to where you can commute in and enjoy it if you wanted to. Now, if you're up there and you're in the HOA area where you're in, master plan community, there's CDD, there's all these beautiful amenities, you're more than likely looking for that suburban lifestyle. You want the brand new schools, you want the brand new house, you want everything new, and you want the amenities to just go over, take your kids to on the weekends or even after school and be able to enjoy that. Everything is in that bubble, right? One of the communities that I talk about very often is Nocatee, and a lot of people here in the area call Nocatee a bubble because in reality, unless you're leaving for work, you really don't need to leave Nocatee because they have everything in there, whether it's going to be the schools or it's going to be worship or it's going to be even emergency centers they have in there, also restaurants, shopping, dental places, whatever you can think of, they pretty much have there in that bubble. And that's the design of many of the master plan communities that have been developed over these past couple years. They're trying to keep everything in this bubble so that it's extremely attractive to live there. But that comes with an HOA, a CDD, and those typically are going to increase your monthly cost pretty significantly. Now, if I was just take a swing at it, most HOA CDs are going to be somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 for the year, depending on the type of amenities that you get. Whereas if you're closer to St. Augustine, the prices are actually going to be cheaper, which is funny. You think being closer to the beach, closer to historic downtown, prices would be more expensive. But because they have that northern part of the county, they can go to Jacksonville and get a better paying job in Jacksonville than they could find here in St. Johns County. So if you're up there in the northern part, you get the best of both worlds, where if you're closer to St. Augustine, the prices go down and you're typically not in an HOA. Are there HOA communities surrounding St. Augustine? 100%. But for the most part, a lot of this area is going to be older homes and it's going to be no HOA. Now, of course, when I say older, I'm not talking brand new house. I'm talking homes that are probably built around the early 2000s. And of course, we have homes that date back hundreds of years. Of course, we have the historic district downtown. But the one caveat to that is you're going to get a lower house price, but your taxes, if you're in the city of St. Augustine or if you're in St. Augustine Beach, are more than likely going to be higher than what you find in the county. Now, of course, in the northern part of the county, you have HOA and CDDs, so it kind of makes up for it. But another thing to think of is if you're closer to downtown St. Augustine, you're closer to the water, there is potential that you could be in a flood zone where you have to pay for flood insurance, right? So that's just another additional cost. You get a lower housing price, but there are some caveats to that, such as your taxes might be a little bit higher and also your flood insurance might be higher. Now, just to recap that, most of the places in downtown St. Augustine, most of the houses throughout entire St. Johns County are going to be in flood zone X, where you're not going to have to be required to pay for flood insurance. If you have a loan on the home and you're in a flood zone, you're more than likely going to have to pay for flood insurance. If you own the home straight out, you can self-insure. You don't have to pay any insurance if you don't want to at all. And if you're asking my personal opinion, like I live in St. Augustine, I live a mile from downtown, right? If you live in the northern part of the county, your address may say St. Augustine, but you don't live in St. Augustine. So before you buy, know what lifestyle you're looking for and know what area you want to direct your life in. Do you want the small beach town lifestyle, or do you want that master plan community with that luxury amenity feel? And this leads us to our 5th and final secret, which is more or less about a history lesson here in St. Johns County, which if you moved here and you didn't know these things, people would know immediately that you're not a local. So I think this is important for you to know if you are looking to move here in the area. First thing is the local history. Now, of course, we all know that downtown St. Augustine is the nation's oldest city, or at least oldest continually inhabited city. It's been inhabited by the Spanish, it's been inhabited by the French, the English, and of course the United States of America. But what you may not know is that we also have tons of history surrounding, obviously, the Spanish, but also Black history and Native American history here in the area. And one of the things I'll touch on is going to be the Menorcans that came over from Spain. They came over as indentured servants, and I think it was in Daytona, if I remember correctly, where they started a settlement there, and then their indentured servitude changed, essentially, and the people that were like, hey, we brought you over here, yeah, we said it was going to be 7 or 8 years, but really it didn't start until this time, so we're going to need you here for a couple years longer. They said, forget that, we're moving up north. So they moved closer to St. Augustine, where they are able to live freely. And that really hasn't changed. There's tons of families in this area that claim they are Menorcan. So that tells you that they've lived here and their families lived here for generations after generations after generation. So that's really important to know. My old boss, actually, his last name was Solana, and that's one of the names of the families that are Menorcan, and they've been here for a long, long time. So once you hear a name like that and you know, or someone says, oh, I'm Menorcan, you can assume 100% that they're local and they are from St. Augustine. And that's pretty rare these days to find. And another thing I want to mention comes around to pronunciations of things, which is a dead giveaway that you're not from the area. One area is called Michler's Beach. Now, if you have a regular education, you know how to read and write, it's spelt Micklers all day long, M-I-C-K-L-E-R-S. But it's a local family name here, so it's pronounced Michler. If you say Micklers, people, dead giveaway, people know you're not from here. Another one, Pontevedra Beach. If you call it Pontevedra, which is probably the correct way to say it, people will know that you're not from here, right? Pontevedra is what we call it here. Now, the locals probably washed that over, from years and years of the Spanish being here and brought it to more of like English terms, right? But everyone here calls it Pontevedra. They don't say Pontevedra, right? Which is probably the right way to say it. So that's just another thing, like if you say it one way or the other, it's a dead giveaway that you're not from this area. All right, guys, and now you know just a little bit of what the locals know about living here in St. Augustine. If you are looking to buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida, make sure you reach out to me and my team. All we try to do is give you the information so that you can make an educated decision on what you want to do, which is buy, sell, or invest here in St. Augustine, Florida. Until next time, guys, have a good one.